Thanks for clicking on this video. Today we're covering pickups. We need to add a couple adjustments so that our platforms move down when we pick up our hat or our rocket.
And this is on special request from a couple of you that have noticed that the platforms don't move when you pick up these items. So thanks for subscribing and thanks for caring so much, and we hope you enjoy this video.
Yeah. Alright, so when you're in Unity, go to your body script in the scripts folder. If I can find it, there it is. And we're going to want to scroll down quite a ways to the else if other .tag equals hat. We're going to go below all this feet script stuff and we're going to type in a new line of code. And this line of code is going to say controller.last object jumped equals controller.nextGroup and a semicolon. And this is accessing the last object jumped that's in our controller script, our game controller script. And it's going to set it equal to the next group that's also in our game controller script.
Now normally when we jump on a platform, we're setting the last object jumped equal to that platform, but because when we pick up a hat or a jetpack we delete that pickup, we need to set the last object jumped equal to something, and that's why we're setting it equal to the next group. And now we need to access our toLERPDiff variable, which is in our controller script. So we type controller.toLERPDiff equals, and then we're going to set it to a value, and we'll say 15.
In this next line we're going to call the toLERP, which is also in our game controller script, and we're going to set its vector3 value to things that we want to set it to. And that's going to be controller.toLERP equals new vector3 and then parentheses, and we'll tell you what we're typing in the parentheses in just a moment. Our first value of this vector3 is going to be 0. Then we put a comma in, and our second value of the vector3 is going to be, we're going to subtract the toLERPDiff from the Y position of the current group. And so this is going to have quite a bit of code, but it's really, if you know what it's saying, it's pretty simple. So the current group is also in our game controller script, so it's going to need a controller in front of it, and then .currentGroup .transform.position.y minus. Okay, and then our toLERPDiff is also in our game controller script, so we're going to need to put a controller in front of that, toLERPDiff. And that is going to be our middle value that we want for our vector3, our toLERP vector3. So comma, and then our third value is going to be another 0. Do you want to explain any more of that?
So we use this code when we land on a platform and we're changing the toLERP and the toLERPDiff when we do that. And so this is really just taking how far we want to move our platforms and subtracting it from the current position or the current Y position of our current group object and setting it to toLERP. And this is really what moves our platforms, because we have our movement function in our game controller script that is called an update, and whenever toLERP is different than what it currently is, then our function lerps to that position.
Okay, cool. And that's it for inside this hat tag. We can then copy and paste this script into our jetpack script, roughly put it in the same area of code as our jetpack script, and we can change the value to, let's say, 20, because it's a jetpack and it's not a little spinny hat.
And you can really test around with the values that you put in the two-lerp diff and make it your own. If you put a really big number, though, it might just break your game, because we were running into that same problem.
All right, after you're done inserting that into your else if other .tag in the Jetpack, go to game controller script, and then let's find the group move function. All right, it's right here, and we're going to insert some code in here. And the first line is going to be an if statement that checks to see if the last jump was hat. So the argument's gonna say feet.last_jump double equals, and then in brackets hat.
Quotes.
Yeah, quotes. I mean, and in the argument we're gonna access the position of the current group. So current group.transform position. All right, we're going to set it equal to vector3.lerp. And this is how we're going to move our platforms. And parentheses, and inside the parentheses, it's going to be current group.transform.position, comma, 2lerp, comma, 2 times time.delta_time. Semicolon at the end.
So what this lerp function does is it takes in 3 different parameters. The first one is the current position of the object that you're moving. So in this case, it's current group.transform.position. The second argument is where you want your object to move to. And so our 2lerp is the new position that we want our object to move to. And then the third parameter is the speed in which you want the move to happen. And so the reason why we're doing different if statements for the different pickups is so that you can move the platforms or the groups at different speeds. So if you want, you can just have a generic speed for all your, like whether you jump on a platform or whether you pick up a hat, have it all be the same speed. And then you don't really need these if statements, you just need the line that's already in there. Because this line is the same as the bottom line in this function. The only difference is the speed that we move it at.
So for our Jetpack, we can copy and paste this whole if statement and paste it in below here and change it to an else if, and then we're checking to see if it's Jetpack and not hat. And then we also want to change the speed a bit too, and so we can change that right here and should we do 2.5?
Yeah, and then an F for float.
So why don't we have an F in the first one?
Because it is working as an integer. I mean, you can have an F after the 2 and it would still work. But because we don't have a decimal, we don't need to specify that it's a float.
Cool.
Because it'll use it as an integer. And so these different speeds you can play around with on your own and change them to different values and see whether it moves the platforms too fast or whether it moves them too slow. And these are just values that we chose that work best for our game.
Then let's put in an else before this statement, because we don't want this line of code to run if we pick up a hat or a Jetpack. We only want it to run when we don't have a hat or Jetpack picked up. And the next line is a new group in the same game. All right, let's find new group, the function new group. There we go. It's right there. We're going to add some code to this function. And this first line is going to check, it's going to be an if statement, and it's going to check to see if last object jumped is null. So if last object jump double equals null. And if that's the case, then it's going to set last object jumped equal to the current group. Then we have another if statement, and this one's going to check to see if the last jump from the feet script is hat. And the body of that if statement.
The body of that if statement is toLERP_diff equals last object jumped dot transform dot position dot y minus toLERP.y. Now what this line of code is doing is if we are moving our platforms and then our current group reaches the point in which it's deleted, it's destroyed because it's gone completely off the bottom of the screen, then we need to make sure that if there's still a distance that our platforms need to move, we reset the toLERP_diff and the toLERP variables with the rest of the distance it needs to move. And so this next line, we say toLERP equals new vector 3, and then in parentheses, we're setting the x to 0, the current group equal to, or we're setting the x to 0, the y position to current group dot transform dot position dot y minus toLERP_diff, and then the z is going to be 0.
And since we want to set this also for our Jetpack, we can do this easily with our if statement argument and just put a double, what are those called?
A bar.
Yeah, double bars for an or. And then we can even copy paste this part so we don't have to retype it. And then change hat to Jetpack. So this statement will work also if we pick up a Jetpack. And then, because we don't want this code running all the time, even when we pick up a Jetpack or a hat, we will need to put an else here so that it only runs when the if statements don't get.
And you might not have curly braces around these two lines of code. And so if you don't have those, you can add those in as well.
Hit Control S and let's go back to Unity. And make sure everything is lined up.
Should be.
Do we need to add anything into the game controller or?
I don't think so, because we didn't create any new variables. So we should be
cool.
Good.
So let's test run this puppy. Good thing the shoot function's still working. Now let's see if we can find a hat. Oh crap. I just died. We should probably turn the monsters off. Oh, yeah, we haven't done the shoot script with it. I'm sure we can run into a hat before we run into a monster on one of these. Unless we took all the hats off. Did we take all the hats off? I don't think we did.
Getting deleted.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason.
Get away! So, we got some debugging to do because I don't think hats are appearing in the game.
Okay, so we figured out what the problem was. We need to go to our pickup script in Visual Studios. And then one mistake that we made in the last video is in this if statement under void destroy pickup, we say featscript.hat does not equal null, or featscript.jetpack equals null. And this should be a not equals. So we're going to delete one of these equal signs and put an exclamation point, and then save it and go back to Unity and see if it fixed the problem. And it did. So we got our jetpack, and you saw that the platforms moved down. And so we'll see if we can pick up another one and not run into a monster. If we run into a monster, I'm going to have to pause it and delete the monster real quick, because we haven't fixed the bullet script. And there's the monster. Let me just delete him real quick. And then we'll resume. Oh, another one. Let's delete him. Try and get more items. There's one. Boom. We got it. And there should have been a jetpack right there that we could have picked up, but because of our script last time, there wasn't. And there also should have been a hat right about here. But there wasn't, because we had a jetpack. But now there's a hat. We picked that up, and whoops, the hat script's not moving. So we'll have to fix that. Let me see if I can fix it real quick. Okay, so for some reason, something didn't get saved. And so I went back to Visual Studios, I saved it, and it works now. So as long as I don't touch a monster, and I pick up a hat, so here's the hat, boom, it moved. And it didn't drop the hat, and that's probably because it didn't delete the monster. So I need to go to our group that I have the monster and add the pickup script, because that didn't get added in. So now when I get an item pickup, there shouldn't be any monsters, but there was a monster there. So note to yourself, you probably don't want to put any monsters in your easy group array, because if there's any monsters, then the players won't be able to get very far if a monster spawns right at the beginning of the game. So a little bit of a lesson from this debugging, just make sure that you're always putting the right operator in your if statements. So if you're putting double equals when it should be a not equals with an exclamation point, or also make sure that you're always saving your project, because something didn't get saved, and that's why the hat script, or the hat movement, wasn't working, which is weird because the jetpack was moving. Thanks for watching this video and staying to the end. We hope that you learned everything that we have to teach you and it works for you. Make sure that you subscribe.
And subscribe.